Hey everyone, thanks for joining. As I said earlier, this is going to be recorded and the slide deck will be sent out after today's session, but really quickly, we're going to be using the chat feature. So make sure you set that little blue button from hosts and panelists to everyone so we can all chat and ask questions together. My name is Rihanna. I'm on the marketing team here at Flatiron. And thank you for calling in today. Today's session is Tech in 20, and Joseph, who is a lead cybersecurity instructor here at Flatiron, is going to be walking us through the session today. Feel free to ask questions throughout, and we will answer them at the end. All right, Joseph, feel free to take it away.
Thanks, Rihanna. Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Joseph Gawlowicz. I'm talking to you from Rochester, New York. Just on the western end of New York State, near Buffalo and Toronto, in case you don't know where that's at. And I wouldn't blame you because very few people do. That's a nice place. It gets chilly up here. Hopefully, the weather's nice wherever you guys are at. So thank you for signing up for our Tech in 20 series. Today, we're going to talk about ethics in cybersecurity. Not a deep dive, just an overview of some of the issues we deal with, and some surprising facts that maybe a lot of people that aren't in cybersecurity don't really know. A little bit about me. I am originally from Chicago, and so I see a couple of people from Chicago out there, and I spent 9 years in the military as a photojournalist, got out, did some other stuff, and went to law school, but I've been a lifelong nerd. Spent the last nearly 20 years as a labor and employment litigator here in Western New York, and a variety of other legal stuff. But technology has always sort of been my thing. I'm a gamer, programmer, and nerd generally. So a few years or so ago, right before the pandemic, as a matter of fact, I decided to step away from my partnership and pivot back to technology. Still working on the last few credits of my second master's degree in cybersecurity. But I've always loved teaching, and Flatiron School attracted me. And I've been teaching here for 7 months, I think, at this point. I also teach at a local university here in Western New York, and a couple of other places like that. So really into teaching, really into helping people find their way. I'm a non-traditional student, and I love folks that I love helping people that are looking for a new path in life. So cybersecurity is really exciting. You might be asking, well, what's a lawyer doing here talking about this? Shouldn't somebody more nerdy than that be here? Well, the fact of the matter is, if you go on Indeed or any of the job sites, that sort of stuff, and type cybersecurity, pretty much anything, just the word security kind of implies law and law enforcement and all of that stuff. So while there's hundreds of thousands of jobs and people are attracted to the great salaries and all of that for great reason, a lot of people kind of are not necessarily quite aware how close you work with law enforcement and law and policy and finance and banking and everything else, because it's really all about security when you start talking about crime and malware and all that other stuff that we get into. Lots and lots of jobs, whether they're out there for technicians, for analysts, for marketing people, for business people, lawyers, paralegals, everything's out there. Lots and lots of opportunity. So ethics in cybersecurity. What is cybersecurity, though? Probably should put a definition on that. Generally speaking, what we're talking about cybersecurity is dealing with the understanding of digital vulnerabilities in systems, attacks against our systems, threats, and the defensive measures we take in regards to protecting all of those particular things. Nowadays, especially for the younger folks, what we call digital natives, all of this stuff that we take for granted, our smartphones, our amazing streaming services, socials, all that kind of stuff, seems like it's been here forever, but it's actually really quite new. And because of that, a lot of the things that we deal with in terms of security are also quite new. So, but what we do is we boil down security into three main topics, and they all sort of interlock. And from these things, all three, the entire discipline flows. Those three topics are confidentiality, integrity, and availability. We call that the CIA triad, not some excuse me, not the Central Intelligence Agency, but the CIA triad in terms of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Sorry, I got hung up there for a second. I saw something in the chat. Please put your questions in the chat. We will definitely get to them. I won't be taking questions while I talk, but definitely please throw them in the chat, and we will definitely do some Q&A afterwards. So let's talk about what kind.
Do you have your, do you want me to share the slide deck, or do you want to share it?
Oh, I thought I did. I'm sorry. See, I always forget that part.
Thanks.
Thank you for the reminder. There we go. Wait, can you see it?
Perfect. Thanks.
There we go. There's you didn't miss much. There's the first slide of the slide deck. And this is what I was just talking about: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Confidentiality, privacy, secrecy, anonymity, all those things about keeping things private, whether that's on a personal level, on a family level, a small business level, politically, big business, everything that we think about in terms of keeping things away from other people and keeping them to ourselves. That's probably the big one that people think about when they think about cybersecurity. But the other two are just as important. In fact, if not even more so when you really think about it. Integrity means accuracy. For example, the accuracy of your bank account. When you make a deposit, you want that number to add up correctly. If someone gets into your account and takes money out without authorization, well, and you go back and you check your balance and it's not right, well, you want to be able to have that fixed and figure out what went wrong. That's one very simple example of the idea of integrity, that when you store something someplace, when you go back to get it, it should be the same thing that it was before. Another idea of integrity is when we transmit information, say via text or video or email or whatever. The idea that whatever you're getting at the receiving end is exactly the same thing that was sent to you and no one has messed with it in between. The idea of availability is the idea that our systems should be reliable. And for the most part, when we need the internet, when we need to access something, whether it's for business, whether it's for an emergency, or whether it's just, sitting down and watching Netflix, we want this stuff to work. But there are certain types of attacks that will bring our systems down, and at best, they're annoying, and at worst, they're incredibly disruptive and sometimes even deadly. So those are the three things we talk about. Cybersecurity professionals work to ensure confidentiality, integrity, and availability across our digital world. But cybersecurity conceptually is also big data. And this picture of a desert almost doesn't do justice to the fact of how much data we're really talking about, because cybersecurity really is big data. It is so big, it's almost incomprehensible to really think about. I've got a picture of a highway here, for example, to symbolize the fact that one autonomous car, one car that drives itself, can generate hundreds of terabytes of data in a single year. To put that in perspective, if you have a run-of-the-mill laptop, it probably has about a terabyte worth of storage space on it. You'd have to stack up about 100 of those laptops in order to store the information generated by just one autonomous car. That's a lot of digits. And it's everywhere. It's not just volume, it's everywhere. Here I've got a picture of the McLaren car, Formula One, sponsored by the technology and data company called Splunk. That's very, very central to cybersecurity. I only recently became really aware about how deep the technology is in these vehicles. but it's amazing. Thousands of sensors, tons of data. The stuff just would not run anymore without digital technology. But there's also the traditional stuff. This is just a bare list of a variety of different things that 20 years ago would have been familiar to most people. Even Wi-Fi at that point was a thing. Servers, databases, firewalls, routers, switches, stuff that sounds pretty boring, but that makes our digital world go round. But it's the stuff that moves all this data all around us all the time. But if you're like me, you probably have a bunch of smart devices now in your house. Aside from your phone and your computer and things like that, you probably have a lot of IoT stuff. Me personally, I lost track at about the 40th item. I have way too many IoT things, and I just can't keep track. But it's like you can't even buy things anymore without them being plug pluggable into your network or into your Wi-Fi. I think the last thing I bought was a Wi-Fi floor fan, which I can control from my phone. The stuff is everywhere, and all that data is useful, and all of that data is also makes us vulnerable. Back to the cell phone. Just what's in your wallet, like the commercial says. This young lady sitting here just having a coffee, looking at her phone. All of us that have our phones here. Just as a bare off the top of my head list, name, location, preferences for any number of different things, including coffee, credit card information, email, text, Instagram, photos, videos, social security numbers, relationships, illicit relationships, socials, employment, questionable activities, hobbies, bad habits, criminal activity, cryptography, business, investment, on and on and on. And this is just a short list. It's amazing what we carry around in our pockets today that we never would have done 20 years ago, and what we can access through these devices all the time, and makes us incredibly vulnerable and therefore gives rise to the need for a robust cybersecurity profession. Just a few crazy statistics to put it in perspective. How big is big? As of 2020, people generated about 1.7 megabytes of data per second each. To put that in perspective, a decent sized JPEG taken on your phone probably is about that size. So imagine that just walking around every second, you're essentially taking a photograph's worth of data just by whatever you're doing. What else is in here that's really interesting? Yeah, 2021, last year, 68% of Instagram users were pumped out photographs from manufacturers to try to sell products. A couple years ago, the average was around 500,000 tweets a day. And billions of emails are sent, hundreds of billions of emails are sent every single day. So it's just a massive amount of stuff. I have an entire talk we did actually last night on how to handle that stuff. But the problem is that the people that handle that stuff need to be trusted. That's the problem with cybersecurity. How do we trust the people that work in cybersecurity to protect all the stuff on our phones and our systems and our accounts and every place else? We call cybersecurity professionals the white hats, like in the cowboy movies, the good guys, but they have the same knowledge, technology, hardware, software, tools, methods that the bad guys do, the people we call the black hats. People in cybersecurity know cryptography, they know programming, they know networks, they know human manipulation, which is a big deal in cybersecurity. A lot of times people think of cybersecurity as simply digital stuff, but actually human engineering, we call it, is one of the most potent ways of actually getting into systems, actually hacking people. All sorts of ways that the good guys can act just like the bad guys. And in fact, we spend a lot of time trying to think like bad guys in order to outwit them. Essentially, cybersecurity professionals are the police of the digital world. So what keeps professionals honest and trustworthy? Morals and ethics generally. People have debated morals and ethical codes for as long as there have been people. They're the rules that we live by. Generally speaking, morals are in the internal habits, codes, rules, the things we believe in ourselves on how to behave for ourselves and in relation to other people, that we've probably grown up by, been taught by our culture, perhaps our religion. But then there's also ethics. Ethics are the external, the formal and internal codes and rules that are imposed upon us by society, family, religion, relationships, professions, that sort of thing. And it's ethics that make professions go round and keep the traditional professions on the straight and narrow so that they can be trusted. Codes of ethics, they set out guidelines for behavior and best practices for honesty, integrity, and professionalism. They apply to usually members of an organization or at least a loose group, and violating those ethics can result in some sort of penalty or sanction, including termination or expulsion. Main types of codes of ethics include compliance-based ethics, value-based ethics, or codes of ethics among professionals. So, for example, some industries like banking and financing have specific laws that mandate certain types of conduct in and amongst investment professionals. In some of the traditional professions, there are specific codes of ethics that have lasted for decades and centuries, and those applied to the traditional professions of like the law, accounting, and medicine. But cybersecurity, guess what? Has no ethical code. That's right. You would think that I was about to introduce you to a whole set of rules that cybersecurity professionals live by, and there really isn't one. Why is that? The practice of cybersecurity is brand new. It's less than 15 years old. People talked a little bit about cybersecurity 20, 25 years or so ago. But that was really the dawn of the internet age. It's really just the last 10 years that the need and the volume of cybersecurity problems has blossomed to the point where we have hundreds of thousands of jobs open and a need for people to work in the field. So while there's a general conversation about ethics and how to behave as cybersecurity workers, there is no specific code. Instead, the fallback, when there isn't an ethical code everybody agrees on for a group, is laws and regulations, contracts and agreements, rules of employment, and those are always much harder to enforce. It's interesting because it's always hard to become a professional in a traditional sense. It's hard to become a doctor, an accountant, a lawyer. And once you're in that club, you don't want to get kicked out because it's almost impossible to get back in. So folks in the traditional professions tend to try to operate on the straight and narrow with lots of course, glaring exceptions. But there is a need, and there are recognized areas of concern. The good news is, and I'll get to this towards the end here in a moment, that most cyber professionals are just like you and me, okay? Just regular folks wanting to live our lives to do the right by themselves, by their families, and by society. So the big areas of concern are privacy, going back to confidentiality, accuracy, going back to integrity, and access, going back to availability. So no surprise that what we're really concerned about here ethically is the same as what the profession is all about. Back to the CIA triad, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of our information. I added a couple of bullets below here just to drive the point home that there's a difference between civil and criminal laws and rules. And one of the ways we distinguish what we're talking about in cyber is that, generally speaking, property crimes or property violations For example, just breaking into your systems, generally a civil problem, and then any number of criminal things derive from even worse activity. But privacy, accuracy, and access, let's dive into those a little bit and just sensitize you to what we're really talking about when we start talking about an ethical code for cyber. In the privacy world, we think about secrecy and privacy and confidentiality. What's most important to us on a personal level? Back to that photograph of the young lady having the coffee. A whole laundry list of personal stuff on that phone, probably, and all sorts of stuff that we hadn't even thought of. Aside from that, there's professional privacy. All the different traditional professions I listed, and anybody that's in business or anybody that's got a job has an interest in having their professional information kept private. There's corporate privacy. Okay, big businesses, even small businesses, even a corner store, a bodega, or a little corner store will actually be trucking in a lot of data and a lot of money and wants its information kept private. And then there's the idea of anonymity, which sometimes gets left off of these lists, but it's important to point out. Sometimes people just want to be left alone. There's a difference between being private, keeping your stuff secret, and being anonymous, which is you just don't exist, or get as close to that as possible nowadays. Some people, for some people, that's a very important value. And cybersecurity professionals try to work with people for whom that's important to keep them even more secret and private than most people might think is necessary. On to integrity and accuracy. Frankly, accuracy is what makes the world go around. If you think about finances, factory inventories, grocery stores, healthcare, all this sort of information needs to be dead accurate all the time, almost without fail. If it's not accurate, we lose trust in our banking system, we lose trust in our healthcare system, we lose trust in our investment system, we lose trust in everything. And so ensuring accuracy is a very high level value for cybersecurity. The flip side of that, battling disinformation and inaccuracy, because it can be dangerous to individuals, families, groups, companies, nations, cultures. Bad information is, just generally speaking, a bad thing because it can really hurt people. One of the two problems we have, though, when we talk about accuracy, is volume and people. Back to my first example of the autonomous car, when we start talking about volume, the amount of information now is just growing exponentially, and just dealing with it is on an individual basis impossible for one person or even a small group. We have software, we have all sorts of other systems to deal with that volume problem, but it makes keeping things accurate very difficult. But the other problem with accuracy is people. If you've been on, social media lately, you know that there's all sorts of stuff floating around, whatever your particular opinions are about politics or any number of different things, that is just inaccurate. It's a big issue and something cybersecurity folks talk about all the time. I see Rihanna's back. I've got two more slides, so I hope, do we have time or?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, good. So the last concern is access. People need access. Literally, last week, the internet went down in Western New York. A really big swath of the state actually was down for about 12 hours, and it was weird. I grew up without Wi-Fi and the internet and all this stuff, but now we use it constantly. And when it's not available, it's just plain odd. So, at best, and inconvenient at worst, and sometimes it can be dangerous. People need access, day-to-day information, transactions. We need transparency in communications. And so ensuring access is a big deal. So how can we trust cybersecurity workers? Well, they're people like you and me. Most of us are just on about living our lives, doing the best by ourselves, our friends, our families, and all of that. One of the nice incentives about cybersecurity is that the jobs pay really, really well. So folks that work in cybersecurity have a great incentive to get those jobs, hang on to those jobs, and do good work by those jobs because they get paid very, very well. So lots of good incentives. But there is an ongoing conversation amongst all these folks as this area of endeavor matures about a more traditional ethical code for folks to follow along the lines of the professional code of responsibility for attorneys, for example, or the different codes that govern the medicine and accounting. So it is an ongoing conversation, which is really the point of this, to sensitize folks that just like the digital world, it's in constant evolution. This is new stuff and new ground. And as consumers, as citizens, as people, as just plain folks, we need to know that cybersecurity workers need to be bound by an ethical code, but it's still a work in progress. The good news is that by and large, most of the people that work in cybersecurity are quite trustworthy. Otherwise, they wouldn't be getting the great jobs that they're going after. And that's sort of my spiel on ethics and cybersecurity. A quick overview, and hopefully you got something out of that that you didn't know before. And again, my name is Joseph Gawlowicz at the Flatiron School, and we appreciate you joining us today. If you have any questions, be glad to chat.
I got a couple in the Q&A. Somebody asked, which field is better to go into, software and web development or cybersecurity?
You know, I'm not going to pick one for you. The thing about it is as a lifelong non-traditional learner, I keep sort of, someday maybe I'll figure out what I want to do when I grow up. So I'm the wrong guy to ask. What I would say is to follow the thing that you most enjoy, and you'll probably be happiest. And that just coincidentally, I shared with some students earlier today an article quoting Warren Buffett, the famous investor, the Oracle of Omaha, saying exactly that basically do what you love. And, if web design is your thing, that's my first master's degree, actually. At that time, 20 years ago, that seemed like the thing, and I still do that stuff, actually. Great, awesome. But if you like to program, the fact of the matter is more and more, especially in cyber, I would say that cyber attracts the most generalists. Flatiron has 4 different programs. We have cyber, we have design, we have software engineering, and we have data science. The other 3 are very specific because of the matter they deal with. Cybersecurity, because it deals with so many different parts of society, is a lot broader. So it attracts a lot different people. So if that helps, I hope it does. That said, one other plug for the school, I would definitely call and explore those options more with our admissions folks, because they're the ones that can help you parse apart the differences and the similarities.
Yes, another question. What, in your opinion, are the new emerging ethical issues of cybersecurity we're yet to face soon?
Well, if I knew an answer to that, I'd probably be rich, because it hasn't happened yet. So I don't mean to be cagey about the answer. It's hard to predict the future. The thing is that the 3 main problems of cybersecurity are what they've always been: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. The problems just change over time. What I would say on a personal level, and this is really just me speaking personally, is that disinformation is probably the biggest problem that we have, is not being able to always trust what people say and share online. And it becomes harder and harder every day. I see a question there. How does GRC apply to ethics in cybersecurity? So and oh, it's the same person. Are we discussing how GRC applies in ethics? So, yeah. So GRC, for those of folks who aren't nerdy enough to know, is the study of governance, risk, and compliance. Our cybersecurity program is divided into 8 topics, one of which is GRC. It's the least, on the surface of it, technical of the topics in cybersecurity. But and one of the reasons I'm here is that I teach that stuff, because it's the stuff that really glues everything together. If you think of cybersecurity, like the first slide in my slide deck, a bunch of people sitting in a room behind computers staring at graphs and things like that. Nothing wrong with that. But the reason that all those people are sitting there is because people in boardrooms and corporate leadership have made it a priority to provide resources to make those jobs happen. And that comes through governance. Governance meaning, how do we govern organizations of all shapes and sizes? That's private business, that's nonprofits, that's government, that's military, whatever. How do we govern and organize stuff? Risk meaning, what is a risk? Literally, what is going to cause us a problem? What is going to cause us not to make money? What's going to cause us to lose money? What's going to cause us not to be able to do the things we want to do safely on a regular basis? And then compliance, meaning, how do we comply with laws, rules, regulations, and policies? Okay. Where does ethics plug into that? Everywhere. Because ethics is all about doing the right thing at the right time. And if you don't have an ethical compass, it makes it much, much harder to make good decisions in terms of governance, risk, and compliance. So yeah, we talk about ethics pretty much all the time. It's all woven in on a daily basis.
Perfect. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you for that presentation, and thank you all for joining tonight. I dropped a link to schedule a chat with our admissions if you have more questions on Flatiron School or our programs. As I said earlier, we'll be sending out this deck and a recording within a few business days. And we look forward to hearing from you guys soon. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you.